technology is only valuable if it delivers business value, business results, right? So if you want to implement AI, you cannot wait 3-4 months before you get somebody in-house to fill that position. So speed matters more and more now. They should shift from looking at headcounts to looking at problems.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Control Shifter, a podcast by Smart Dev and Verisio AI featuring voices that take control and drive the ship. Today's episode features someone who's helping reshape how modern companies think about risk, talents, and leadership. Andre, he's a seasoned technology leader with over 25 years of experience across corporate and startup landscape. Now currently serve as CTO at Kairos Risk Solution and founder of Workforce Studio, where he helps SMEs and startup navigate technology strategy, cybersecurity, and risk management with fractional CTO engagement. He's also a director at Manster Hub, a nonprofit that supports young professionals in Singapore through mentorship. Andre, welcome. Anything to share with our audience before we jump right in?
Hey, Maddie, thank you. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I think let's jump right in because you guys will know about Andre. How did he end up here and all of his past experience through the upcoming segment I'm currently presenting. So before we dive into strategy and security, let's begin with your journey. You're a leader who playing on both sides, corporate and startup, and ended up creating a special engagement model for leadership in today's market. So what led you to be a fractional CTO, and how did you experience in both corporate and startup environments?
Yeah, so for those that's not familiar with the term fractional executive, a fractional executive or a fractional CTO like me is just like a fully embedded executive leader, right? So I'm similar in my responsibilities as a full-time chief technology officer. The only difference is that I work part-time. And I work part-time for certain types of companies that don't need full-time executives like me. So I'll explain that later in the segment. But to answer your question, so how did I come to be a fractional CTO? Well, Maddie, you said that I work in two careers. So I started my career in the large corporate worlds, large multinationals. I spent about a decade and a half as a consultant at Accenture, and at Accenture, I helped big multinational companies. And typically, the kind of projects that I dealt with at that time were, big complex systems, right? Implementation of big complex systems. So in the world of large companies, having a rigid governance is important, having good risk management, having, a good organizational structure, all of those is very important. After spending a decade and a half in corporate world, I moved on to early stage startups. I worked for fintech startups, moved around in several companies, several startups. The difference there is that in that world, speed is often more important. It's often the most important thing, speed and agility, right? So context is very, very important. And what works in the corporate world doesn't necessarily work in the startup world, and vice versa. So it helps for me to have views of both worlds, because then I started noticing that there is a leadership gap for certain type of companies that, as in their journey, these companies are maybe early stage or mid market, but they come to a point where they want to grow, they want to establish themselves as a more larger company serving larger markets. They are in a growth stage, right? So oftentimes in companies like this, when they started the company early on, when they use technology, the most important thing is for the technology to work. just just make sure that the technology can stay on, doesn't crash, and the most important thing in the company is to get to revenue as soon as possible, right? So they probably hired some IT team, some junior IT team. They started developing their software. But as the company grows, as the company matures, then technology plays a more important part of the business. And that's where things like security is important, compliance is important or becomes more important, right? But they end up in a situation whereby they need to be more structured in their processes. They need to be more secure, but their current IT team just doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the capability to take them to the next level. So I see that gap in the market. That's when I decided that I want to offer a fractional CTO service for these types of companies. And that's when I started the Workforce Studio in 2022, offering fractional CTO service and help these mid-market early stage startups innovate and implement technology in a stable and secure manner.
I see. Yeah, I believe with this really fast moving wood, startup are the firm that act quicker than everyone else and still need to be really a solid guidance. But at the same time, they might be not have that capability for that, and you are the one who jump right in and help them. Okay, so when the pace of change, especially in startup environment, right, is rapid, what principles or framework that helps you guide your decision?
It's a great question because, as you know, technology moves really fast. Not just technology, actually, the whole business world is moving faster and faster, right? So what ends up becoming a problem in a lot of IT teams is that they start getting a lot of requests from their business counterparts, right? So the CEO would have, big ideas. CEO would tell IT to implement a few initiatives, a few technology initiatives. Somebody in operations needs to be agile. They ask IT to automate a few things, right? HR needs to find talent quickly, and HR is asking IT, hey, help us with screening candidates and automate our recruitment systems, right? So all of that is very, very common nowadays. And like you said, the business world is moving faster and faster. So in my experience, my advice to IT teams is that there's a few things that I use as a framework to make decisions and prioritization. So number one is, will this initiative actually move the needle? Right? So that's one. Another is this request actually urgent or is it just loud? You know, is it, we need to be able to distinguish between urgency and importance.
Yep.
Okay. And then the third thing is, are we ready? Are we ready as an organization, as a company to implement this technology? So let me explain further. Number one, will it move the needle, right? So basically, that's about really understanding the business value. And there's a lot of hype in technology, right? As you know. So you may get a request to implement the latest technology, blockchain, AI, whatever is hype at the moment. IT gets that request. But as an IT leader, you need to really understand, will this make a difference in our business? It depends. Again, it's back to the context, right? Because of course there is value of innovation and technology, but a lot of times, yeah, if you implement the latest technology, maybe that gives you a nice press release, but does press release really give you revenue? Maybe not, right? So that's number one. And then the difference between importance and urgency. This is very important because something that's important may not necessarily be urgent, correct? So if it's important, yeah, definitely do it. But most of the time, IT would have 100 things on their task list, right? So we need to know which one is urgent. Because sometimes urgent has strict deadline, and even if it's less important, sometimes you just have to do the urgent things. And then the third is our company ready to implement this technology? So I give you an example. I have one of my clients who want to implement AI technology to automate certain things. AI gets a lot of hype, but a lot of people may not, if you're not in tech, you may not understand that the ability for AI to help you also depends on, whether you have data that the AI can process. So if you don't have data if you don't have clean data, for example, then it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So the AI will probably not able to give you good outputs if your data is not clean or if it's not in a format that's ready to be consumed by the AI. So it's important to know the prerequisite, I guess, to implement certain things, and that's the role of an IT leader, is to be able to make sense out of all these, sometimes chaotic environment.
I see. I see. This also remind me in one podcast that we did with an AI strategist in EY. He also said that not every initiative possible is purposeful. So I mean, it doesn't mean that this is possible, people doing it, and we started to implement them, but we have to take into account many of the aspects in the business
Right.
context and the market context, a lot of things to take into account.
Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you have to do it, right?
Right,
Yeah.
it is. You also face on the business side and on the technical side as well. So how do you
Mhm.
bridge the gap between these two sides? Because yeah, when I'm talking to the developers team, they couldn't like understand me 100%. I have to
Yeah.
explain a lot.
Yeah, so this is very important, bridging the business and technology, right? That's actually the role of a good the responsibility of a IT leader is to be able to bridge these two different worlds, the business world and the technology world. Unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, but in reality, experience really helps. I give you some context. So today with ChatGPT, you can get answers, right? You can get
Right.
answers. Everyone is smart because they have ChatGPT. Whatever question you have, ChatGPT will give you the answer. But ChatGPT is a tool. AI is a tool. You have to ask ChatGPT the right questions. And how do you know how do you ask ChatGPT the right questions? Well, this is where experience comes in, right? And back to what I said earlier, context is important. So as a tech leader, I have to know this. This is my responsibility. I'm responsible to understand what the business needs. This is how IT gets to sit in the table. By understanding what the business needs, then I'll be able to think how technology can help the business. At the end of the day, technology exists to support the whole company, the business, right? So I need to be able to speak business as well as technology. I need to be able to understand how the business runs, how value is created by the business, right? The value chain. If I'm helping my client, I need to understand their value chain. And
Mhm.
different companies would have different value chains, but they're all, it's all about how the offering is created, whether it's a professional service offering or whether it's a product. And to create that offering, there's cost. And by giving this service or product to the market, you get revenue. And then you need to think about the profit margin and all that stuff. You need to know that there is marketing involved, there's partnership involved, there's distribution channel and all that stuff. As an IT person, as an IT leader, you have to understand all of this. And then you also have to know what's possible using technology in 2025. So my responsibility is also to keep up to date with the latest technology. And what's possible now is may not be possible, 3 years ago, a couple of years ago. AI is very, very fast moving right now. There's a lot of innovation. Every day you would read news about AI innovation. You have to keep up to date on this. And the cost of doing something with technology also keeps changing, right? Technology usually becomes cheaper and cheaper. So if somebody were to ask me, can I do this like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, can I do this using technology? I would say, yes, it's possible, but then it'll be expensive. But today, that same technology may be a lot cheaper, right? So that same technology may be more palatable to the business if implemented in 2025 compared to 2015. So there's a role of a technology leader. That's one responsibility. The other responsibility is also to translate strategy to execution. First, you need to understand what is the strategy of the business, what is the strategy of the CEO, the business leaders, and then you have to translate that to your IT team, right? So now that we know this strategy, then how do we execute it? How do we execute it using technology? So that's another part of the responsibility. Part of my responsibility is then to be able to talk to my team in IT and explain to them what kind of technology do we implement to support the business strategy.
I see. I believe these kind of cross-functional work has always been tough, but it's still really cool to see how different department or different level perceive the same problem in a very unique way, because we can see a
Mhm.
side that this department couldn't see, we can see a side that that department couldn't see. But I think it's, do you like this? Do you like the act of translation? Do you like to do this?
Yeah, well, for me, yes, because I started my career as a software developer, right? So all I was responsible for is just coding. But then I became more and more interested in how technology supports the business. Technology is only valuable if it delivers business value, business
It
results,
is.
right? So I forced myself to learn to speak the same language as my business counterparts,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, satisfaction then becomes how I can use technology to support my business colleagues. Of course, now I have my own fractional CTO company. So my goal is not just simply to build cool technology, but also delivering something that's actually deliver business results for my clients.
So now we move to today's core topic, which is the future of work, hiring, and the growing shift forward fractional leadership. Yeah, you've been seeing the gap, as you told the audience and me as well. You're seeing the gap that we have shortage in senior IT roles that can guide all of these fast moving company like startup move forward because they
Mm-hmm.
maybe don't have capability, and it takes a lot of time. Beside that, how is the traditional hiring model would fail in today's tech landscape? I mean, just beside that, beside the reason, the gap that you've seen, are there any other gap that you see as well
Mm.
in these
Yeah,
current, yeah?
yeah. Great question. So, if we rewind back, we spoke a few minutes ago about how the business world is becoming more and more rapid.
Right.
There's changes are happening every day, right? So, agility is very important. Speed and agility are two very important things in the business world right now. Previously, when we say, okay, business needs to be agile, business needs to move faster, the thinking is like, okay, how can we do that in IT, right? I'm sure your listeners also have heard about agile methodology. For me in IT, we've heard agile methodology for more than 2 decades now. I think the Agile Manifesto was first written back in 2001. And nowadays it's pretty common. In fact, that's probably the expectation now. If you're in IT, you have to deliver projects in agile methodology.
Mm-hmm.
Most companies will have that practice already now. And then in architecture, also, there's agile architecture. Gartner came up with the bimodal uh, IT model a few years ago. The goal there is to make technology implementation more agile. But like you said, now your question is about hiring, right? So hiring is also must be agile. It's not enough for technology only to be agile, but the rest of the organization must be agile too. Because think about it. If let's say your goal as a company is to take advantage of artificial intelligence technology, you have to have people in your company that can harness this technology, can make use of
Mm-hmm.
this technology, right? So traditionally, as a head of HR, what do? Oh, you're probably thinking, oh, I need to find somebody to hire that's knowledgeable in AI. But think about it. If that's your only way of getting talent inside your organization, today that's the traditional way of hiring is that okay, you put up job posting maybe on LinkedIn, maybe on some job boards, you get some
Mm-hmm.
candidates, you interview these candidates maybe 2 3 times, and then you make a decision, and then you do some background checks, and then you make an offer, and that person probably has a notice period of 1 2 or 3 months, right, before that person can join the company. And when that person joins the company, then there's a learning curve, et cetera, before this person can actually be productive, right? So I don't think that hiring model is suitable now that the business world is moving so fast. You cannot just wait. If you want to implement AI, you cannot wait 3 4 months before you get somebody in-house to fill that position.
Mm-hmm.
So speed matters more and more now. My recommendation for business leaders thinking about this is to be open to the possibility of hiring experts, hiring
Mm-hmm.
experts on either a part-time basis or on a project basis. You have to have this in your arsenal, if you're looking for talents. And the war on talent is real, right? There's a lot of demand for AI skills, for example, today. There's just not a lot of skills out there. There's very limited skills, and these skills are in high demand.
Mm-hmm.
So either you have a lot of budget in your HR to pay salaries, or you have to be open to possibilities of hiring external team members to help you with these specific initiatives, specific skill sets. So I think that's from an HR perspective, that's what I would recommend, to be more agile.
I think now people is not just refer this agile methodology in just solely in software development, but in across department and in personal scale. Like I work in an agile way, for example, in a personal scale as well. So I believe you are also the one like that because you have to stay agile. So you can work
Yeah.
part time, this project, that project, talk with leadership CEO in the morning and talk with the IT team in the afternoon. You got to be agile as well. And this is also a tough question is that how do you stay agile? How do each person stay agile in this fast moving world? So yeah, just to
hmm
get to know your experience and maybe understand how exactly you work in an agile way.
Yeah, great question. And it's a mindset. It's a mindset, right? I always go back to the Agile Manifesto and thinking about what I mentioned earlier when I shared a story about working in a corporate world versus working in early stage startups. So context matters. You always have to go back to what exactly are you trying to achieve, right? I give you an example. So in a highly regulated industry like financial services, for example, there are things that are non-negotiable. Let's say if you're trying to get ISO 27001 certified, for example,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because that is the demand of your environment, of your company, of your environment. That's non-negotiable. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
certified ISO 27001. Then part of that, the implication of that security certification is certain controls must be implemented, and these controls, when implemented, must be able to be audited. And audited typically means you have to have documentations that you can prove that you have done these things, that you have implemented these controls, right? These are the non-negotiables. Now, the objective is, of course, good, but the objective is that you have some controls that you implement. Now, if you know you're going to be audited, then you need to be able to prove it. But if you're not, if your company doesn't need to be audited, or if you don't need to be certified ISO 27001, having those controls are still important, but documentation is less important, right? Or documentation that you can prove to an auditor, that's less important. And of course, as best practice, you still need to have these security controls, right? So this goes back to the Agile Manifesto, for example. When you're building software, is documentation important? Yes. Even if it's agile or non-agile, documentation is important because then you will have institutional knowledge of your software, right? If your team member leaves the company, for example, the company still has this documentation as in its institutional knowledge. So yes, documentation is important, but what kind of documentation? So the Agile Manifesto basically says that you don't need a thick documentation about your software. What's important is go back to the first principles, right? What you need is something that if let's say there's a turnover, somebody new comes into your company, then this person can read your explanation about the software and be able to get up to speed. It doesn't need to be a 50-page document, but it's something that will help to achieve that goal. Now, to go back to your question, that kind of mindset can be implemented in other areas as well, right? Not just in software development, not just in IT. It can be implemented in operations, in finance, etc. You have to go back to the first principles and ask yourself, what exactly am I trying to achieve here? And what's the best way to achieve those goals in a way that doesn't give me a lot of overhead that I can do quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
hopefully that answers your question.
I see, I see. So yeah, so I've been hearing you sharing all of the cool thing that you did for all of these business. So for our audience who are listening to this and might be want
hmm
to work with you, what mindset shift is needed for businesses to embrace hybrid teams or full-time or fractional senior level talents, for
Yeah.
example, like you?
Let me share my experience as a fractional CTO. And I think
Mm-hmm.
this applies to other fractional models as well. As I mentioned earlier, the type of company that will really benefit from hiring a fractional executive or a fractional CTO, let's say, in my experience, will be companies that are at a stage where they are sizable enough,
Mm-hmm.
probably mid-market, and then trying to grow or trying to have a strategic move. So
Mm-hmm.
I give you an example. I was working with this company who has become pretty successful in their market where they start with, which is Singapore, where I'm based in. So this company is successful already in their local market. Now they want to grow, they want to expand to a different market, in this case, US and Europe. Now, what they then discovered is that when they want to expand to these advanced markets, their customers and their partners overseas, they demand that this company, the Singapore company, to be certified in their security. And security certification could be ISO 27001 or SOC 2 or something similar, right? So again, in this example, because for them to be able to be successful in Singapore, they actually don't need this security certification. So their current IT team is not experienced in ISO 27001, right? So they're not knowledgeable enough to shape up their IT operations and IT security to be able to get certified. So this is where this understanding of what needs to be done then leads them to discover my service, because they need expertise that they don't have in-house. They need it quickly. And for somebody like me, a fractional executive that does this on a day-to-day basis, I can help them pretty quickly. So most of the time when I get engaged by my client, of course, there's a period where we talk about contracts and commercials and so on. Because I've done this so many times before, typically that process can be done really quickly, 2 weeks maximum, let's say, or most of the time it takes less than 2 weeks, and I can get started right away. Because I bring my experience, it doesn't take me long to get up to speed of things, right? Especially if their need is very clear. Like in this example, let's say they just need to get ISO 27001.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've helped a lot of companies with security certification, I already know how to help them. So somebody like me would be able to come in quickly and then get up to speed quickly and then start being productive and helping them. That's one example. Another example is that one of my clients have a lot of initiatives that they want to execute.
Mm-hmm.
And one option would be for them to hire different vendors for different initiatives, right? But you need to understand that for every vendor you hire, you still need to manage them. If you're a CEO busy with running your company, you may not have the capacity to lead these different vendors, right? You want to be able to delegate that task to somebody who's knowledgeable and experienced in managing IT vendors. So that's another example. Another one of my client, they came to a stage in their company where they really want to invest a lot in their technology. So they have a lot of IT projects in mind, and these IT projects would have different areas, right? So one could be in security, the other one could be in automation, the other one could be in artificial intelligence, the other one could be in software development. Having
Mm-hmm.
a senior person that has experience in all of these different areas in IT is really helpful, right? So you just have one person that can manage and lead all these different initiatives. So that's another, potential opportunities for if you're a CEO or business leaders looking for establish to make your IT stronger and you have a lot of initiatives in mind, then having hiring somebody who's experienced like on a fractional basis, something that you definitely should consider.
Mm-hmm. I see. How do you think these leaders should have, what mindset shift they should have to embrace all these engagement model? Because currently we're still sticking with hiring, like as you say, it takes a lot of time, right? From
Mm.
interview to onboarding. And now the engagement model that you're offering is still special and not very mainstream. So what is the mindset shift that you think they should have to really embrace these?
Yeah. I think what's important for these business leaders is that they should shift from looking at headcounts to looking at problems. right? The traditional way of thinking would be, oh, I have a project in mind or initiative in mind. Then
Mm-hmm.
I need to increase my workforce by 3 people, 4 people. But if you go back to first principles again, if they shift that mindset to say to think about, okay, what exactly is the problem that I'm trying to solve here, then
Mm-hmm.
you can come up with different options for this, right? So hiring permanent staff is not your only option. And somebody who's skilled and experienced, one person can probably do the job of 2 people, 3 people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So having the mindset of defining that problem, understanding, going back to defining the problem that you're trying to solve and knowing what's possible right now, that's the kind of mindset that you need to have right now, especially when it comes to how artificial intelligence now is in our lives, right? Again, it's very relevant in my world in technology in software development right now. It used to be that when you want to build a software, you have to have a team of software developers, and then you have a team of infrastructure engineers to host your software. But nowadays, in 2025, one person, one experienced software engineer with the help of AI can do a lot, can be more productive. And with the availability of platforms out there, you don't need to buy your own servers. You don't need to set up your own data centers. There are services out there that you can use to host your software, and these services will host your software in a secure and scalable and stable manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So always go back to the business problem that you have and understand what options you have in 2025, whether it's technology, whether it's human resources, whether it's whatever areas you have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are a lot of options right now. If you and you can pick those options if you really understand what you're trying to solve.
Yeah, I see. So still get back to the context and see what's the business is prioritized right now is what urgent, what's important, and pick the engagement model in terms of human resources that most suitable, I would say. Okay, now let's pivot a bit on the security side, which you also been an expert of. You've been seeing how fast AI is changing the cyber landscape, both in terms of threats and defenses. So, how does the rise of AI um, change the way we think about cybersecurity risk?
Yeah. This is a hot topic nowadays in
Yes,
my world.
yes.
Uh, it's quite a hot topic now. And I see it as AI versus AI, you know, because at the end of the day, artificial intelligence is a tool, right? And a tool can be used for good, can be used for bad as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, the hackers out there, they all also want to use AI to do damage as wide as possible. 91% of cyber attacks start with phishing emails,
Yep.
which is quite eye opening. And phishing emails, think about it. Phishing emails are emails targeted to you and I, end users, and they try to trick you to do something that will give them access to your company's assets, right? Imagine now if you have AI to write phishing emails for you. You can use AI to automate, find personal information about you and me, and then write personalized emails to trick you and I to, give hackers access, right? Hackers, I'm sure all of them now are using AI to do damage. But the good news is that AI is also used by security protection out there. It's a race of using AI to improve protection also, right? Same like how you can automate generating phishing emails, we can also use AI to automate tracking, detecting of these phishing emails, help us identify which emails are real and which emails are fake. So what's interesting here is that just like in any other technology areas,
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity included, we all try to use AI for improving our products and services, and it's happening in the cybersecurity world as well. it's an evolving field. That's why it's quite interesting to to keep track of all the news in AI in the cybersecurity world.
Yeah, AI battling AI. I believe this been, as you said, very hot topic. Still at this time, I believe still not fully explored or having a really radical solution on it. So as you said, phishing email, 91% is the scam. And when people got scammed by clicking into these phishing email, that's the part of user behavior,
Yeah.
right? In our company, we also do trainings about our employees to be aware and stay aware of these kind of emails. But for some companies, as you also mentioned, that they train their employees just by reading PowerPoints and other related materials to prevent this risk. So as also cybersecurity expert, also work with operational team as well. Do you have any better initiatives so that maybe our audience would take
Yeah.
into account?
I remember when I was working in my previous company, everyone had to take cybersecurity awareness training because it's in the policy, right? In the policy says that companies must train their employees in cybersecurity. So what a lot of companies do is that they would have like annual training for cybersecurity topics, and they may engage a vendor to do the training, but then they put these staff into a classroom, and then they have like a 2-hour training session on cybersecurity, and that's it. And then staff take the training, they walk out of the training room, and then after a month, they forget about it. But then the company can say, okay, tick, I have trained all my employees in cybersecurity. So is it done? Yes. Is it effective? I don't think so. Especially when you're not dealing with cybersecurity day to day, you will soon forget about what the training teaches you when it comes to cybersecurity. But fortunately, there is a better way, and I've experienced this myself, and I've also recommend all my clients to do this. The better way for cybersecurity awareness would be continuous training, and this is also related to how we do things nowadays, right? On demand or bite size. And you take it online at your convenience. If you're sitting in front of your computer, you would take the training on your laptop. But if you have, let's say, 15 minutes and you're sitting somewhere not in front of your laptop, then you can use your mobile phone to take the training as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the better way to deliver cybersecurity awareness training to me, and what I recommend, is to use and there's a number of different options nowadays, but use software to do this. All right,
Mm-hmm.
and that software will give bite-sized training to your staff and do it continuously. So you may take the training program may be half an hour every month, right? But there's different topics every month that you can take on a bite-sized kind of thing. And you do it throughout the year, so you'll always get reminded about cybersecurity, what you need to know about cybersecurity. You get reminded every month. Cybersecurity is again another fast evolving subjects, right? There's
Yep.
always new ways for hackers to try to attack you. So the topic must also evolve according to the vulnerabilities that we have today. So that's what I've seen successful in a number of different companies that I've worked with. Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
and
see.
another thing, Maddie, people people is always the weakest link, right? Because security protection, there's a best practice to it. There are solutions out there. There's best practice. There is testing, scanning that you can do
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that your technology environment is protected, that your
Mm-hmm.
software is protected. There are ways to do it. There's proven ways to do it. But human is something that's kind of like a wild card, right? Even me, for example, I'm supposed to know cybersecurity, and I know cybersecurity. I have a lot of experience in cybersecurity, but
Yep.
on my bad day, sometimes, like if I'm on autopilot, like I have a bad day, and then I read a phishing email, I may not be in the right mindset to detect that is actually phishing. And it happens to all of us, right? Me included. Now fortunately, in my case, even though I couldn't detect a phishing email, and I fell for it, but I also have other protection, other layers of protection.
Okay.
So, um, but it's a reminder. It's a reminder, right, that it can happen to anyone. You may have your guard down, you may have a bad day, and humans oftentimes can be a very, a weak factor when it comes to cybersecurity.
Yeah, and when we're talking about cybersecurity, the case that you're talking is refer much on internal information and something related to that. And for our team, we also do that. But currently, with the advent of AI, we are a software development company, right? So we also leverage AI in software development as well. So we use code editing tools, those IDE tools. The thing is, these model, if we use it without reading throughout the policies of those tools, our code line could potentially be feed to the LLM model or even make it public. And it's going to
Mm,
be even worse if we have our code leaked when we are doing
mhm,
on a client project, because especially for a product
mhm,
client, because their code is can we say that that's their most valuable asset and we couldn't have it leaked. So whenever I'm
right.
filming our developers using AI tools to just simply boost their productivity, they're just always telling me that, Maddie, you have to clarify that we not use this in our client product. You have to clarify that upfront. And it was like, it was really that matter.
Mhm.
And after a few times, after a whole time working with them, I think that, yeah, we got to put these into account a lot. And yeah, and we also going to the age of AI's leverage in information management as well. And these tools has to be really put into a strict governance framework, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Maddie. You brought up a good point there that the danger is that we don't realize this because AI nowadays is so embedded in what we do every day, right? And it's not just your professional life, it's all of our lives. I mean, it's the same tool, ChatGPT. The ChatGPT is very, very flexible. You talk to ChatGPT about solving business problems, work problems, right? But you also talk to ChatGPT about your personal matters as well, seek advice on your personal life as well. And it gets blurry sometimes, right? Because some information you can just share to ChatGPT because that information is not private or not confidential. But then you go to work and you use ChatGPT and then without realizing it, then you start sharing confidential information to ChatGPT. So yeah, you brought up a good point that it's governance and data privacy, data security. These things, all staff must realize this. They must realize the importance of data privacy and intellectual property and policy of AI implementation, AI use policy in your company. I
Hmm.
think a lot of companies are starting to realize that that becomes very, very important. And of course, when you have policy, you also need to have communication to your employees, right? And that's very important. But again, like I said, sometimes mistakes happen, and it's very easy to make mistakes when it comes to artificial intelligence because we use it all the time, and sometimes you didn't realize that you're sharing sensitive information.
It is. So that's why you said that we have to have multiple layers to prevent those things could
Yeah.
happen. But up till now, I have not yet seen any such layer when we're talking about the usage of AI. So the question is, how should organizations incorporate ethical risk and data privacy into their AI governance framework?
Yeah, that's the key question, right? That's the very important questions for all companies that want to implement AI solutions. Personally, the best way for this is to have a platform that you can build AI solutions on. Let me give you an example, okay? There are AI solutions out there that are targeting enterprise. I don't endorse, but I'll just give examples. Microsoft Copilot is one option. Google Workspace also has Gemini in the Google Workspace platform. The good thing about these platform is that not only the LLM, but also the governance is included as part of the platform itself. So we spoke about data privacy, for example, right? Uh, Auditability, uh, log log of activities, user access rights. These things are built in for platforms like that. So if you, let's say, roll out a Microsoft Copilot in your organization,
Mm-hmm.
the platform supports the right user access. The platform supports auditability and logging, so that if you're an IT leader in your company, you can have assurance that only the right people will have the right access to information. If we roll out Copilot, for example, in one company, and I'm an entry level person there, I cannot go to Microsoft Copilot and ask what is the salary of my CEO. The governance structure in Microsoft Copilot will prevent me from getting that answer, even though the AI itself, that data of the CEO salary is available in the company, right? So my point is that when business leaders, when IT leaders want to deploy artificial intelligence solutions, don't think about point solutions, think about platforms that have governance built in, access management built in, and so on. So now, once you have this platform, then of course you may also want to use this platform to build your own solutions, right? Let's say you are a financial service company and you want to use AI to help you with credit decisions, for example. Now, the question is then, how do you build a credit decision engine with AI that is free of bias, that gives you accurate answers
Mm-hmm.
and not biased towards a certain customer segment? So, as a business leader, these are some of the things that you need to think about, right? And lots of times it's also about training your AI model with the right kind of data. So, I mean, there are ways to get it, and it's probably too technical to talk about in this podcast. But as a business leader, then you have to know all these things. You have to know the risks of having AI in the organization, and you have to know, now that you identified the risk, then the question is, how do I mitigate this risk, and how do I implement controls so that I can manage these risks? These are the things that you need to think about. And also, there's one thing that I want to highlight as well. The problem that we have now is that AI is fairly new, and you have to know what hype and what's reality, right? Because number one, because this is such a hot topic, you see new companies build every day. Every day there's like a startup, new AI startup that's getting funded by the large VCs, right? They claim that they have innovative AI solutions, and they upload videos on YouTube, and you go to YouTube to look at their videos, and their videos look really, really cool, really, really excellent, and very, very accurate. But you have to remember that videos are just videos. Then the reality is that this technology is evolving, right? So what I would do is I would try to get some proof of concept first before I roll it out to the rest of my company.
Mm-hmm.
Really verify whether the answers are accurate and free of bias. You have to vet these companies. Number one, the solutions, and then number two, you also need to be careful. You have to understand the risks that not all companies last forever, right? And this is very dangerous because there's a lot of new startups out there. This always happens in a new field where you have a lot of companies started up, but in a few years, in a couple of years, in 5 years, then either they shut down or they get bought out by bigger companies, right? So if you're a decision maker, if you're a business leader trying to find what AI solutions to implement, you also have to understand the risk of engaging with the new startup and the new companies, because you have to know that not all of them will be around 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? And this happens over and over again. When we have a dot-com boom some decades ago, we have the blockchain hype like around 10 years ago. Yeah. And it's just the nature of the world, Innovation is one thing to implement innovation, but it's another thing to make sure that you always get support from your vendors, from your solution providers.
I see. Very actionable suggestion from you, and I believe our listener could take it into account, think about it more clearly, because we have so many noise around us right now and no idea whether this one is true or not.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think one of the final questions before we end this very rich conversation. So, from your perspective, where will AI will have the most long-term impact, especially from a cybersecurity standpoint or the HR standpoint,
Hmm.
two field that you are mainly working on?
Yeah, that's a it's a great question and it's very difficult to answer because it's so broad. I think AI will impact pretty much all our lives, personal lives, professional lives, all industries will be impacted. It's really a revolutionary technology. I wouldn't say it's hype, you know. I mean, a lot of people are talking about it, but it deserves all the attention it's getting right now,
Right. I like that.
because it is going to be impacting everyone. Every single person in this world is going to be impacted by AI. So it's very difficult to answer your question. But I think what we need to understand is that the question that we need to ask ourselves is that if everyone has access to AI and if everyone gets smarter because they have AI as their co-pilot, as their companion, then the question we need to ask ourselves is then what really matters then? If everyone is suddenly becomes very smart, then what really matters? I don't really know the answers to that, but I think we need to think about changing how we judge performance, right? Values and contributions. In the business world, if everyone is smart suddenly, then how do we still contribute meaningfully? And I think the soft skill will be more important in the
Mm-hmm.
age of AI. Human relationship is going to be important. How you communicate with others on a personal level is going to be important. Emotional intelligence is going to be more important. Critical thinking. I mentioned earlier that if you have ChatGPT to answer all your questions, then what you need to know then is how to pick the right questions, right? That becomes more important rather than getting answers to your questions. So critical thinking is going to be important. Your integrity and your judgment is going to be more and more important. And I think to close it, to wrap it up, if AI will raise the floor, then your soft skills will raise the ceiling.
Great. Such a golden closing. I love that. And yeah, and currently, and I've been witnessing that so many software development company and IT company, they are moving into a kind of positioning called AI first approach, AI power software development, etc. But the thing that I have always to clarify upfront is still, even though AI first, but they still have a human first approach there, even though AI is the power, is the tools that can power them to work things, but they always highlighting the human components whenever they share this to their clients or their audience. And I believe that's also highlighting the part that human interactions, communications between humans and humans are getting more important and important nowadays.
Yeah, spot on. I know there's talk about robotics now, and then we will be replaced by robots in factories. But I hope that even if we have AI, it doesn't take away from humanity. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, I still think that human relationship is important. There's still certain basics in humanity that we still need to uphold, even with the advent of AI in our lives. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
human relationship is still going to be important,
Mm-hmm.
and we always need to remember that.
Yep. Thanks, Andre, for all the really rich insights and information. It's such a great conversation. I
My
mean,
pleasure. Yeah.
yeah, we've been going through so many layers, so many parts that we're discussing, from cybersecurity to human resources to operation to how a fractional CTO work gonna be like. Okay, so I think before we closing the show, I know that you have already put down that closing thoughts over there, but any final words you would like to share with our audience?
Well, hope that's useful. If you want to reach out to me, find me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Always happy to connect and share thought.
Yep. Okay. So great. Thank you, Andre. And everyone, this is Control Shifter with Andre, a fractional CTO. And we'll see you next time.